Welcome everybody to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today, I have a great guest. This is somebody I actually met online with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs and investors. And after asking a few questions, it turns out he's so much more closer to home than I realized. He's right here in the same hometown as me. And after asking a few more questions, we actually have connections going way back to 15, 20 years ago, which was pretty amazing. Now, when I noticed him, he was a guy that helps future awesome people break through barriers. He's full of energy, has a great attitude, and it was a lot of fun to talk to. He's a Dragon Boat national champion. He's also a self-made millionaire in stocks. So he's a really amazing stock investor. He's a podcast host. He's an IT program manager, a co-coach of the Canadian national Dragon Boat team, and also a leadership and career coach. So please welcome Mr. Darwin Li.
Good morning, Fong. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here on your show.
Hey, thanks for being here. How's everything going so far?
Things are going really well. They're busy, but that's how I like it. Yeah.
Nice. Now, to go to first of all, it turns out that we had the connections to. I actually know your brother from
it's pretty cool.
20 years ago, and when you mentioned Chinese school, that was something I haven't thought about for years. So it was kind of cool to go, hey, wait, you know who? So it's great talking to you and get to know where we actually kind of know each other. So that's
yeah, totally.
So with regards to leadership and career coaching, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to where you are, and how did you find that passion to become a leadership and career coach?
Well, what I realized along the way is that there's something in people that are extraordinary that makes them extraordinary. And early on, I have a natural inclination and an interest to find out what makes great people great. And as I started it, in the work world and going back to school even, I try to find out what made those people tick, and then gradually got into leadership and coaching as I started to learn more about that realm, but also taking the lessons of kind of extraordinary people I'd met along the way, most of whom I'm still in contact with.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, I know you have this amazing story where you kind of found your true calling to really dive into leadership, dive into helping other people, and kind of taking life every step of the way and just appreciating it. Would you mind sharing that story with us, and how did that change your life?
Yeah, it's weird. When I look back, it's still a little bit weird, but it was certainly life-changing. About 8 years ago, I was in a dragon boat. And people can see that what a dragon boat is from the pictures behind you there. And it's basically a big long boat with a lot of people in it. And we were doing a shoot for a TV station for the local Dragon Boat Festival. And so we'd taken, gone back and forth, and then we'd done one turn to try and give a good shot for the reporters to be able to get, like a good shot of the boat. And as we did that, the current swept us a little bit downstream. So rather than clearing the dock, we were swept right up alongside it. And the current was pretty strong and pushed us, the North Saskatchewan, which you would know, Fong, it's quite strong, and it pushed us right against the side of the dock. Mm-hmm. And for a second we were okay. But then what happened is there was a bit of panic on the boat, and people leaned one way, and the right side of the boat dipped just below the water line. And as that happened, of course, the river water filled up the boat right away, and we went down. I was the first one out, and I started hauling other people out. And for a moment, we seemed like we were okay. But then what happened is I turned and I yelled, "What's our head count?" And came back the answer that you don't want to hear: we're one short. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, the boat had been pushed upside down onto the other side of the dock, so kind of upside down, and alongside, pinned underneath a whole bunch of other boats. So cinched up my life jacket, and then jumped back into the water, and then came back up on the bottom side of the boat. But normally when a boat flips, it flips very quickly. And I'd been in this situation a few times in competition. It happens, right? It flips right away and it captures a pocket of air.
Mhm.
But I'd forgotten this time that the right side had dipped just below the water line and it filled slowly. And so there was no air. And so when I came down and then back up, I basically opened my eyes and then took a deep breath and expelled my oxygen and then breathed in. Of course, there was no air. So I breathed in, basically, my lungs had filled with river water. And so I did something which I don't normally do in water because I'm very comfortable as a swimmer. I came down, then back out, trying to get out. And then the current had swept me downstream, and I was caught underneath, basically like a dock and fiberwood, which was above me, and thrashed around for just a few seconds. I had very little consciousness left, so I could feel the blackness starting to come. And then what happened is my friend, who was Catherine, who was sitting on the boat, she could hear the thumping, and she was looking around, and then she saw my little finger wagging in the water, and then grabbed the boats, pushed them apart, grabbed my hand, pulled me up and saved my life. And from there, I basically realized that I was not really making the most of my life. I'd just been going through day to day, making my living. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my life, because I realized that, looking back, it was a tremendous gift, what happened, and that I could learn from it and basically reconstruct the direction of where my life was going.
Mhm. Wow,
Yeah.
that is very, very amazing, and good for you for jumping back onto the boat, because I know that a lot of people who go through a lot of different traumas and
Yeah.
lots of life-ending experiences, they go, you know what, I'm never touching this again.
Yeah.
So what was it like to go back and, you know what, and either coach or go back and compete, jumping back on that boat for the first time after this incident? How did you go through that mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was back in the boat 2 days later, and
Okay.
um, and so going through that, I had some of the symptoms of PTSD, and so one of the one of the aspects of that is that your body's in fight or flight,
Mhm.
because it hasn't been in danger really for for decades, and then you're in this situation where you nearly died, and so I was very tense, and I still remember when I stepped on. I knew I had to do it, and there was a small army of people watching me to see how it was. And when I first stepped onto the boat, I was shaking, and didn't really want to get in, but I knew I had to, and forced myself to do it. And then gradually, over the course of that practice, slowly eased into being back into the boat. And then it wasn't until a year and a half later that I would say I considered myself kind of over that.
Mhm. Now, how did you find the passion of going into dragon boat racing?
Um, I started in 1996, which is an awful long time ago. The thing I like about Dragon Boat is it's when 20 paddles go in the water at the same time and pull at the same time, you feel like a strong lurch.
Mhm.
And when everyone does it skillfully and powerfully, it's a beautiful feeling.
Mhm.
And so when you're in a boat and you feel that lurch, it's kind of addicting. Yeah, because it's like the ultimate in teamwork, and um, it's very elegant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now run us through that day of winning the national championship and your preparation, and then at what point of race did you go, you know what, I think we got it. We're gonna win this thing.
Yeah. And so nationals is interesting because there's different distances, and I remember one for sure, and that is the 2 kilometer race, for which you go in loops down the 500 course, and then there's some turns, and so we were pretty fast, and we trained very, very hard, and the moment, strangely, is when we were circling around on one of the turns. It got fairly like it got a bit rough, right? And so the boats turn. They're huge boats, and they're turning alongside. And sometimes in the corners when you're turning,
Yeah.
there can be some contact, let's say, and we could hear exactly, because the people on the boat next to me were right next to me. I could have reached out and touched them, and we could hear what they're yelling, and they could hear what we're talking about, and there's some words exchanged, right? We were cool, but they were not. They were looking to, let's say, to like verbal warfare. Let's put it that way.
Trash talking.
Yeah. That's right. And they made an error because all of our boats, because they were so close, there was a little bit of water in them, and they were running heavy, and a number of their paddlers leaned the wrong way, and their boat went down during the turn.
Oh, wow.
And then we cruised right out and straight to the finish. So that was a moment I won't forget. Basically, it was like tight the whole way, tight in the corners, and then that boat was competing with us, sort of in that 2K race, and then we just flew by them, and then from there I knew we were going to be hard to catch.
When you said loops, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean dragon boats turn?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you do that?
It's only in the 2 kilometer. Super fun, but awesome experience.
Now, for somebody who's gone through the experience that you've gone through in Dragon Boat, and also that teamwork, that whole mentality of success and whatnot, have you always been involved with stocks during this time, or was this an afterthought? Like
stocks, like stock investing?
Yeah.
I was involved with stocks, like right from my early 20s. I was interested in it. Mostly, so not individual stocks. I was more into mutual funds at the beginning. But at that time, I was starting to make the change. Yeah.
Was it a little bit easier for you to take bigger risks in stock investing after your experience in Dragon Boat?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Never thought of it that way. I think the way I think of it is that I have an interest in many things, and I believe that one of the things that makes people successful is being open to new ideas. And once they find something they're really passionate about, sinking a lot of energy into that route. And so for me, Dragon Boat was one, and another was in stock investing. So it was one of those doorways that opened for me, that I went into and went as far as I could, as fast as I could. Yeah, It took time, but that's how I kind of see the different options that we have in life, so to speak.
I talk to a lot of people, and they go, you know what, I want to get into stocks, and look, it's so easy. Everybody just put some money in, you get some money out, and how hard can it be? What is the biggest reason why so many of these people don't succeed in stocks?
And I'm glad you asked that, because I worry about people sometimes, because it's so easy to lose money when you don't know what you're doing. And I would start out conservative first. And secondly, you need to do your research. So from the beginning, one of my first jobs, I was making $45,000 a year. And within a couple years, I'd lost $30,000. Like that was money I didn't have to lose. And it was going through that experience that I really learned and realized sort of the lessons started to sink in. So one of them is you have to do your research. The second is you have to do a lot of reading. And if you can, find a mentor. Yeah.
Would you say, like right now, the big thing is crypto? And I think that there's a lot of comparisons between crypto and also stocks. Like you have to put in time, you have to do your research. Do you find it the same thing? Do you find that both of them are kind of similar in the ways that strategy-wise that you would go into?
They're very different investment structures, but I like the way you phrase that question, and I'd agree that you have to do your research and understand what you're getting into before you get into it. So for sure, crypto, there are some question marks there, but also lots and lots of upside and lots of opportunity. So long as you do your research and you have conviction and reasons for what you're doing, it's really a risk game, right? And my tolerance for risk is extremely high, but the risks that I take are measured. I found ways to measure them and to mitigate the risks. So to minimize my downside, to maximize my upside. And having learned to do that, I apply that to not only stocks, but also to crypto.
Do you find that having that athletic background and that athletic mindset, like surrounding yourself with champions and teamwork, does that translate well into entrepreneurship, business, investing?
Yeah, great question. Definitely yes. And it's my belief that those that are successful, those that are excellent, and in particular those that are elite and perform very well and very high, they have particular habits or traits or characteristics or behaviors that have made them successful. And I believe that if you find out what those are and emulate those and try to build those strengths within yourself, you can be successful in different realms of life.
Now, as one of your strong suits right now is helping people with their leadership skills and
Yeah.
finding that career path. When you go to high schools and universities, you talk to like youths and you talk to other like starting out business people, and you go, "Hey, who here wants to be a leader?" Most of them will go, "Hey, I want to be a leader." The ones that don't put their hands up will probably think in their minds, "Yeah, I'm a leader." Now, within all those people, there's a lot of different characteristics.
Yeah.
There's lots of different personalities. There's some that are soft-spoken. Some speak a lot. Some are very outgoing. Some are very closed off. Can all those different types of characteristics and personalities become leaders in their own right? And what types of leaders are there?
I think there's many different traits that constitute leadership, and for sure there are things that everyone, I believe, can and should be a good leader of themselves first, and so that's first. As far as like becoming leaders, which I think is what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of leading other people.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there are certain traits that not predispose, like help someone to be successful in that realm. And there are things that might hold a person back. But so long as you understand your strengths and weaknesses, you can mitigate those weaknesses with a good leadership team around you, or you can put in systems or something in place that will help you to offset and to balance those.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are some people who will go, you know what? I'm not a person who likes to stand up in front of people and speak.
Yeah.
How do those people become leaders?
I think one of the ways is that your actions show who you are to your team or to others. And so, for instance, if we use a sports analogy, a person who plays who plays very few minutes in a game can still lead in the way that they might defend against another person, or in basketball get a rebound, or in hockey, finish their checks. So I think it's about, not everyone wants to get up in front and to talk to people and to lead big groups of people, but I do think you can, by example, kind of show what leadership is, and also can kind of champion certain things, even if they're not leading it as in terms of leading other people. They can lead certain aspects of it. It might be a technical aspect where they're driving an innovation in their organization or their team, or it could be kind of a new way of doing things, a new way of approaching things. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be standing in front of a group of people.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say is one of the biggest no-nos when it comes to leadership? When they do one specific thing, or when they have a certain type of personality, what is that one thing that makes them not as an effective leader as they should be?
I can think of a couple things.
Give me your top 5 list then.
Okay, I'll do a couple. The first would be dishonesty,
Mm-hmm.
and respect is based on honesty, and relationships are built on respect and honesty. So without honesty, it's just not possible to reach and connect with people. And the second is that the person is in it for themselves rather than for the success of the team and the people. So when you first start out as a leader, it's usually you're just given the title of and authority of the leader, and you're not really the leader yet. It's only because you've been hired or appointed, and that's why people, follow what you do, or they follow through on the tasks that you assign. But in order to move up, you have to be able to connect with people on a human level, and to understand what their lives are like, what their passions are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what their likes and dislikes, those kinds of things. And once you have that, it allows you to move up in your leadership with them. And then from there, you become productive. And then there's some other stages after that. But without the ability to connect with people at a human and personal level, it's very limiting in how far a leader can go. Eventually, that catches up to you.
Mhm. Who would you say are the top three leaders that you look up to?
One would be Winston Churchill. I think he was amazing in his leadership. There's a couple authors that I follow very closely. One is John Maxwell, who is I'm certified under his organization, but he's amazing. His books are and his material is amazing. And another one is Craig Groeschel, and he's another leader from the United States who has a leadership podcast and is the pastor of a megachurch. Is amazing. He's the kind of the MC of the largest leadership conference in the world, the Global Leadership Summit, of which I'm a huge fan. So, kind of those are some people for sure that I look up to.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a leader and as a person who coaches leaders and works with leaders, what would you say is the first two or three things that you do in your mind when you're faced with a challenge?
When you're faced with a challenge, the first is I see it like there's a number of doors, and one door leads to other doors being able to open. But without those first ones opening, it closes off kind of the options that you have afterwards. And one of the things is that I think my video just died. I'll turn it back on here. I don't know what happened there. Zoom went swirly on me. One of the first things is of the development of kind of self-awareness and being aware of oneself. If you're not aware of yourself, I don't believe it's possible to be able to really improve. You're not aware of your strengths, your weaknesses. You're not aware, in the way of humility of the things that you need to get better at, and the things that you are strong at, and the things that the direction you're going are those noble goals or those noble causes. So the first would be self-awareness, and then from there, it opens a number of different things. The first is, I believe, attitude is key. An attitude of learning, and an attitude of being coachable, and an attitude of being open. We've all been around people that are sour and negative. And I would bet if you thought about, for anyone who hears this, if you thought about the top leader that you can think of in your career, in your life, or someone you look up to, their attitude is very positive. It's not negative. And so that would be kind of one of the areas that I would kind of be conscious of and work with the person on. And then another area then would be just defining what your goals and maybe your vision is. And so what is the vision you have for your life or your career? And what are the goals you have for your life or your career? And then start to look at some of the ways that you can get there, and then what some of the barriers are and how to move past and through those things.
Now, you mentioned about being coachable and the importance of being a coach. How has coaching affected your career? And what was one of the best coaching advices that you've ever gotten?
Well, it's completely changed my career, and one of the things that I believe strongly in is having. So I have to be clear here because there's a difference between mentorship and coaching. But I am going to talk about mentors. But it's part of growing as a leader. Is I believe you need good mentors, and to be a good mentor to others, is finding good mentors and basically downloading as much knowledge as you can from people. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was about how to relate to people. And so I have a network of world-class people that I keep in touch with and seek advice from and bounce things off of. And one lady named Sandy she is one of the most talented people I've ever met in terms of relating to others. And she was able to turn groups of people completely around in at first being hostile, and then she turned them into advocates for the initiatives she was trying to accomplish. And the kind of the trajectory of exactly a 180 as far as attitudes and trajectory of what she was trying to accomplish. She's extraordinarily talented in that area. And She boiled it down to essentially one thing, which is something I've mentioned before, which is to establish a connection with other people. And it sounds simple, but she has a tremendous gift in doing that I've not seen in anyone else. And so I try to emulate that as best I can.
Mhm. You also talked about listening to podcasts, and I know you yourself have a very interesting and very entertaining podcast. You surround yourself with champions. Tell us more about your podcast and what was your initial thought as to why you created that podcast?
It stems from my belief that successful people have certain traits and behaviors that they do, and that if we emulate those and we really get into the meat of what that is, it helps us to become more successful and better as leaders as well. And so the podcast that I have is called The Evolution of Leaders, and what it is I seek out and talk to high performers and elite performers about their lives and their experiences um, and what makes them tick, and then I share that with the audience. And most of my because I come from a little bit of a sports background, most of my guests are athletes, mostly Olympians, and some have been like world champions and Olympic medalists, and some world record holders, and they're fascinating people from sports. Is very interesting because it's very binary. There's like a win or lose, even though a person can lose and still be a fantastic leader. And I've certainly interviewed people who haven't gotten the gold but are amazing people. But sports gives you kind of a quick way to be able to view success or not a success, at least in the eyes of the public. And so inevitably, when I talk to someone, number one, who's been Olympian, number two, who's been Olympic medalist, or number three, might have been a world record holder, invariably, there are similar characteristics. And it's a guarantee that a person who's achieved that level has gotten there with having had to overcome some significant barriers, be it injury or losing and those kinds of things. And then their insights about coaching are fascinating as well. Many have gone on to coaching, and many have been coached by themselves, having reached that level, have world-class coaches, and those are fascinating insights as well.
Being surrounded by so many different athletes, and as an athlete yourself, right now there's a lot of talk about doing like sports that don't count, doesn't watch the score, and you get a participation ribbon and all that kind of stuff, and there's no win and there's no lose. What's your take on that? And if that's the way it is, how would you coach your kids or work with your with young adults to kind of, what, sometimes you have to push a little and sometimes you have to win? How do you work around that?
And so I'll say first, I do think there are some kids for which the participation medal is important, because otherwise they wouldn't. For some kids, it can be something that encourages them to do more. And if it's a participation medal, that's great. But in general, I think that the top person, the fastest person, the strongest person, is the top or the strongest and the fastest. And we need to recognize that there are some people that achieve a faster or stronger or a better level than others. And it's important we recognize that in performance and in results. So everything we do, everything we talk about, we could talk about stock investing, we could talk about sports, we could talk about life. We can always take lessons, and those are positive and good. And we should, be continually trying to, get more of those lessons and bettering ourselves. But not at the end of the day, it's just in concert with that, in tandem with that, we must be measuring our results and our performance, because that gives us in a very objective view, and a view of how we're doing, that indicates whether the lessons we're getting, whether those are actually valid or whether they're just feelings.
When it comes to business, when it comes to stocks, and you mentioned before you lost lots of money in stocks before you became very successful in it, and then also in what do you call it, in dragon boating. when there's a period of time where there's that failure, there's something that doesn't go right, there's something that doesn't go according to plan. How do you have that? How do you build that mentality of going, hey, wait, this could be a learning opportunity. This could be something that propels me to become better. How do you train your mind to start thinking that way?
I think that I like to think that I embrace failure. And I also like to think that I embrace our opportunity. So from failure, I think if we have the right attitude and we have some degree of self-awareness, the things that happen to us are not really things that push us back, but rather if we have a mentality that we're really there for growth and not just to achieve something. And then whether you achieve it or not tells you that whether you are a failure or not. If you have a mindset of growth, then it changes and colors properly everything that happens to you in life. And we all know and have seen examples of people that have gone through tremendously difficult experiences in life, like tremendously terrible circumstances. And they come out being very successful and very, very positive and tremendous successes. And I think if we have an attitude that the things that happen to us either are there to, maybe they're indicative that, we've succeeded or won at something. But then on the flip side, rather than losing, it's really about, well, what have we learned from this then? Yeah. Hopefully I answered your question. I feel like there was another question I didn't answer there.
Oh, I think you got it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
With regards to the whole lockdown and COVID and whatnot, how have you adjusted to this whole situation?
Well, the podcast is one major area, and I think that with the podcast, it gave me a unique ability to be able to reach people, because it's not often that Olympians are stuck at home. And world-class Olympians are stuck at home, and so it's enabled me to be able to reach them. But also, the world, just a fact of the matter, has gone online, and so that's the realm we're in, and it probably sped up some of that for me, where my plans were a little bit further along, but it sped that up for me, and that's a good thing. As far as personally, I've reached out to quite a few people, and some of whom that I've not been in regular touch with, and reestablished some friendships and stuff like that. And what I realize is there's something about reaching out that I think we should be cognizant of, and that is, rather than just reaching out and saying hi or talking to someone, I think this is where coaching helps, and I would encourage people just to learn a little bit about it, or just to think about it this way, and that is, rather than just reaching out and talking to someone, and it's helpful to ask people, well, how, in the context of things being hard right now, what are your life goals, and what's the direction of where your life is going? And then just to ask questions rather than to give advice. And that will help people more than trying to be someone who's giving advice all the time, because that triggers an increase in self-awareness in that person, and that's what helps people grow.
Cool. Now, listening to you speak here, and I'm sure a lot of people who listens to your voice, you sound like a very, very calm, collected, cool guy. Who's very able to watch the way he presents himself, and be able to present himself very professionally and very smoothly. So how does somebody like you, when you're up there and you're going to motivate your team to win, bring up that energy, and what is that way that you motivate your team? And if you could give us a little kind of snippet as to that cheer or that yell, that mantra, what do you do?
And so right now you're talking to me, and and by the way, good questions, by the way. And so I'm thinking about it and then giving the answer back to you. When I'm motivating, let's say my Dragon Boat team, and at the end of the 2K race, it's just over 10 minutes, right? And so by the end, you've been grinding for 10 minutes, and like your arms want to fall off, and your lungs feel like they're on fire. And so how do you motivate a team that is to a man and woman, just exhausted, tired, and their muscles are burning. And so there's once I did what I call the general speech, and super corny, but like it got a tangible reaction the first time I used it, was which was and this is how it goes. Basically, that you're not just a person, that you're the general of an army, and if you give up, your army will lose and they'll die.
Mm.
But if you get up and lead, your army will follow you. So it takes them out of the mindset of where their mind is, and then puts them in the context of other people relying on you. And they can often break through pain barriers and fatigue barriers when they're able to come out of something like that. And I am screaming at the top of my lungs. Yeah.
Do you give yourself the same speech?
Sometimes I often will try and find something outside of myself to give myself some motivation. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. You have the opportunity to speak to the world. One message, a few sentences. What would that message be?
You must be a slave to the acquisition of knowledge. And I believe that those people who get it and go after it are constantly thinking and reflecting and gaining new insights, and also reading and listening to podcasts, and get a good mentor and get a good coach. And those things will together allow you to excel in life.
Awesome. Very powerful. What's the best way to get in touch with you? And also, how do we find your podcast?
So I'm at evolutionofleaders.com, and I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm Facebook, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and probably those are some of the main ways. Yeah.
Okay. Now, before I let you go, I got a few quick questions for you. If you were to build your ideal Dragon Boat team with cartoon characters,
yeah,
okay, it could be, you can mix Marvel and Disney and whatever. It doesn't matter. Cartoon characters. What would make up your ideal team?
Okay, so cartoon characters. I can choose superheroes.
Superheroes, anything.
I would probably say Captain America. I would say Captain America because I was a big fan of his, and then and he's always the leader, right? And so he's the kind of guy that there's glue that keeps the team together. I'd say for those of you who know Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, because he could just reach ahead and grab something on shore and pull the boat forward.
That might be cheating.
Yeah, it might be cheating, actually. Yeah, for sure. And Iron Man. I was a big Iron Man fan. Just so technological and so far ahead, and uses technology to be awesome.
And then you're right there at the head of the boat, screaming and yelling.
Screaming my head off. That's right.
Great. You have Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans at your home. They're hungry. What are you serving them? What's your expertise?
So I on this, I will defer to something my wife makes, which is a killer recipe, is ribs. Her ribs are awesome.
Nice. First thing you would do after you win that race?
Give my teammates a hug. That's for sure. Yeah.
What other special hidden talent do you have that nobody else really knows?
Hidden talent, hey? Man, I don't know if I can think of one off the top of my head.
If I was gonna put you on stage for you to perform something, not speaking, because I know you can speak, okay? What would you perform?
I used to take organ lessons. So I can play the organ. Yeah, so it's a little different from piano, similar but different kind of thing.
Awesome. And my last question: what is success like? I have 4 random items. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pick a number.
We'll go 2.
1, 2. So how is success like pita bread?
Why is success like pita bread? Well, it's very broad, and it's well-rounded. Man, and it tastes great when you get there.
The taste of success.
Absolutely.
Awesome, bro. Thank you very much for your time and your stories. It's a pleasure talking to you. Do you have any final words?
No, thanks so much for having me on your podcast, and I've listened to quite a few of your episodes, so it's an honor to be featured.
Great. Well, thanks for being here. He is Darwin Li. My name is Fong, and until next time, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.